Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Trap on the Boom Bust channel, a Bears podcast by a Bears fan. I'm your host, Terry. And today we are talking about the Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus era. For those that are new, welcome. For those returning, welcome, Better Bears fans. But for people that are new, you're going to get objective analysis. You're going to get true analysis. That is what we do here. Many people realize they're not a fan of that. They want a hot take. They want a cheerleading take. That's not what we do. So staying consistent with the work, we're going to give you the real take. Now, a few things to be said before we get started. Number one, it needs to be understood that I in no way believe, even with the most accredited, highly credentialed coach or GM or whatever, I believe no decisions are made in a vacuum 100%, especially for a more normal setup like we had. There's no way. And even if it was, we don't know what it was. A lot of people make fun of coach speak, even with Eberflus. Even like people really got mad about how he kind of didn't take accountability for some of the mistakes. But I think honestly, for me, what he was doing was he was being overprotective. For him to even say that Tyreek Stevenson was supposed to be in the spot for the Hail Mary, I think was different than what he typically does. And again, I think he's more robotic, by the book, whatever the PR person says, that's what he kind of does. And you know what? That's fine. Your preference of how you like that. But the point of that is, the point of a Belichick, the point of any coach doing that is because, as I've said many times, they know what happened exactly. There's no question. Like here we speculate. People speculate on TV all the time. There's no speculation in a locker room. Everybody knows exactly what was done, what was said, what the play was called, all that. But to give that opening to the public creates room for speculation and all of that. When you just say, again, we, and sometimes I even say we when I'm talking about this channel, which is really just me. But when you say we, same way you have a business, it's called limited liability company, a LLC, for a reason. Limited liability for the individual. The collective we, or whatever you want to say, we got to get better. Those are the PR answers because it doesn't let you know what's going on behind the scenes. I say all that to say, when we're talking about hiring and decisions, there's definitely things that are people's responsibilities job-wise, but I'm not going to sit here and point fingers about stuff that you don't know. Because we'll get into, how we got here as far as the hirings and stuff, but a lot of people like to say, for example, Eberflus was forced on Poles. We have no idea. That's not, like I said before any of all these stories had started, I told y'all, I do not believe these decisions are being made without Kevin Warren, based on what we know or what we've been told. I don't even believe, again, from seeing with my own eyes, right there on the field, 2 practices in a row, after practice, I've seen Ryan Poles and Eberflus. I don't believe they make decisions without talking, and that's what both have said. And most of the times in the team, especially from like the owner's circle of trust, people want input. So yes, there be one person, same thing in the draft. There be one person that pounds the table, as they say, for something? Yes, but their job is not to let us know that whatever we decide, that's how everybody needs to carry the decision going forward. So we're not going to get into that game. We're not going to do that, but we will assign responsibility as it's supposed to. All right. So before we go down memory lane and analyze kind of this era, we first have to mention, for those that don't know, it's news to me, Sylvie from Waddle and Sylvie, actually, for all the actual Chicago area fans that know those longtime staples, actually was the one. And I seen like the full quote. I didn't like listen to the whole conversation, so I don't know if this is like him talking out of speculation or from his sources, but it sounded definitive. Sorry, I don't know what that is in the background, probably a snowblower. But anyway, it sounded kind of definitive. So I'm not sure where he's speaking from, a point of authority or speculation, but he says that it's a potential that Ryan Poles would possibly mutually part ways at the end. And now he did say that was his theory that's out there. He said it wouldn't surprise him, but he did say that Ryan Poles having to report to Kevin Warren was a big issue for him, that he made known, because part of the reason he took the job was a direct line to the owner or team president, essentially. And or not team president, whatever, you know me. So I was just like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and I get all that. But obviously that's been for a while. As I said, Kevin Warren has the juice. If you really plug into all the discussions, that seems to kind of be the case. So them mutually parting ways, okay, that's one avenue to talk about. I did mention prior to all the uproar against Poles that I think he should be gone too, especially if you get rid of Eberflus. And I said this prior to Eberflus getting fired too. So again, people react, as I already laid it out for you. We did this with Nagy. We've done this already. People are going to point blame at one person when the actual answer is so many other things. And so since people could only look at one thing, they're going to blame somebody. That person leaves, still have the issue. They're going to blame the next person up the ladder. And it just continues that way. And I told you that was going to happen soon as Thomas Brown took over for Waldron. And I'm not saying Waldron was great. A lot of people do that. I'm not saying he was great, but he wasn't the main problem. He wasn't the only problem. And so then the same issues, Thomas Brown, and now we're going to blame Eberflus. And then he goes, now we still have issues. Now we're going to blame Ryan Poles. So people are reacting in the moment. I talked about this prior to all of that, because this is an analysis of not just the in the moment results. It's an analysis of the whole structure. So again, for me, I think he should have, I've been said, I think at the end of the year he should go. If the fans and all that and the way we're losing, if we continue to lose, is there going to be an influence? We'll see. I even said once Kevin Warren announced that Ryan Poles will return and be part of the search, I was like, why does he get that assurance this far out of the season when we're treating these coaches week to week, and depending on how it looks, then we want to have an uproar and fire people? I'm like, why does Ryan Poles safe from that? Obviously he's not safe from that from the fans, but I don't know what they're saying in the building. But now they're talking about a mutual parting of ways. Either way, potentially him leaving, but those are different conversations. So with that in mind, let's talk about the Eberflus and Poles era. So we get, and this is going to be bigger picture. I'm not going through every single transaction or any of that. It's definitely going to be bigger picture. But before we start, I did forget to ask, because I'm still waiting for an answer, let alone a good answer. Why does everybody think Ben Johnson is going to be a great head coach? I'll wait. I'm listening. I've yet to hear any good explanation. Why is it? And I'm not talking about, hey, give Ben Johnson a chance. The discussion, not even this year, last year, We got to sell out. We got to do everything we can. We got to empty the bank. We got to get full control. Why does Ben Johnson have the benefit of the doubt? I really would love to know. And as I was looking up the coaching cycle for when Eberflus was hired, I'm looking at the decisions that were made and the narratives that were happening back then. And I'm sitting here wondering, as I've wondered before, why does Ben Johnson have all this? Like, as I've said before, how many times have we seen these stories play out where all that hype doesn't mean anything? So I'm trying to understand, besides hype, why is it that everybody thinks Ben Johnson is going to be a great head coach? I'm trying to figure that out. So love to know. All right. So anyway, going into this, what was it? Nagging them. Yeah, they got fired. And I did actually, my bad. I should have looked this up prior. I'm almost 100% sure Ryan Poles was hired like right before Eberflus. I know it was before. I don't know if it was like same time. So January 25th. And Eberflus was, January 27th. So this was 2 days after. Okay, that's kind of jogging my memory. I think Ryan Poles joined the already in progress search, but okay, whatever. So we get Ryan Poles. I don't think we need to necessarily go down the long list of other candidates that we interviewed, who I'm sure most people don't know where they are, what they're doing, or any of that. So yeah, we don't really got to go down that. So we get Ryan Poles. He's in the middle of this search, and then we end up hiring Eberflus. So a lot of people, of course, the Bears is terrible, bad organization. They hired Eberflus. It was a mistake. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so let's look at it. And again, this is January, so this is earlier than a lot of other teams end up hiring, because you got teams in the playoffs with coaches that people want. All right, so we look at the list. Dennis Allen, who I believe was acting as the interim head coach for the Saints already when Sean Payton left. Not exactly sure, but either way, he was with the Saints, ended up getting the Saints head coach job, now fired. And he was Raiders before. We kind of know what that was. Todd Bowles, he was just the D coordinator for the Bucs at the time. Won a Super Bowl with, I'm blanking on his name. I haven't said his name in a long time. Oh, old buddy. He almost was a Bears coach too, from the Colts and all that. In the Steelers, I can't remember his name. Anyway, Todd Bowles, Jim Caldwell, who is, I believe, not an analyst, but like a consultant for the Panthers now, and was out of football. Brian Daboll, who claim to fame was working with Josh Allen, which also was the claim to fame for Ken Dorsey, who got promoted and then fired. And Brian Daboll, we know what they're doing. Brian Flores, who I don't think he was with a team at that time, because I think he was fired. Leslie Frazier, I don't even know where he's at. Is he still in the league? But he was with the Bills. Nathaniel Hackett, with the Packers OC. Byron Leftwich, Bucks OC, who's now not coaching. Hackett not coaching, we know that. I don't even know if Frazier's coaching. Doug Peterson, who was not coaching at the time and probably about to get fired, and went to the Jags, as we know. Actually, I think he got hired by the Jags before we made a hire, so there's that. Dan Quinn, when he was with the Cowboys, they interviewed him, but if you remember, Dan Quinn removed his name from consideration from all jobs and decided to stay with the Cowboys. So that's the list. That is the list. Eberflus, I know for sure, I don't know the exact numbers, but the Colts had a top 10 overall defense at the time, and was essentially, they were a run the ball, play defense type of team. Even actually, I don't think he was with Shane Steichen. Was he? I don't remember. But that's the kind of team they had with Jonathan Taylor. Defense was one of the best in the league, and so he was a hot name. Dennis Allen, Saints defense was hot, definitely. He's always kind of had a good defense. His name was hot. He's had head coaching experience. Todd Bowles, head coaching experience. His defense was hot. Caldwell, I'm not really sure. He got a second interview. Brian Daboll, we already talked about that. Flores, head coaching experience, had some good defenses. Leslie Frazier, Bill's defense was hot. Nathaniel Hackett, Byron Leftwich, we know he was there with Brady. Doug Peterson, head coach experience, won a Super Bowl. Enough said. Dan Quinn, defense was hot. So, in terms of the candidates, absolutely Matt Eberflus deserved to be in that group. Of the group that we interviewed, was it a massive mistake? Was it a massive mistake? No. I can say that off the bat. Was it a mistake to hire Eberflus out of this group? I'm not exactly sure that I could really say that. I mean, and I think when people actually, instead of hindsight, just like, oh, this worked out, it didn't. But when they actually look at the context and remember that, A, you probably be less likely to fall into the same trap again, which a lot of people do. And B, you would probably realize that there's a lot of factors that go into the success. It's not just, oh, you messed up, you didn't. It does really matter. So bringing in Ryan Poles, cool. I'm not really going to jump out the window on that one necessarily. He was with the Chiefs at the time, so we all know why, he got the look. And GMs typically are new guys. It's not a lot of recycling GMs. It's a lot less common to be a second time GM than it is to be a second time head coach. So I'm not even worried about that, but the head coaching pool, there you go. Now, and you could tell me what you think. Again, you go look it up, but I named all the guys out of there. So then going forward, for teams that did choose, because we hired them in January, so for teams that chose to wait out the playoff run and things of that nature, you had, and I'll go, let me see. I have no idea what's going on outside. I don't know if y'all can hear that or not, but it's super annoying. But anyway, so let's see who got hired out of this group. All right, so Nathaniel Hackett went to Denver. We all know how that kind of worked out, and just the whole story about why Hackett was even being looked at. I also made fun of y'all, not made fun of y'all, but I asked, because Ben Johnson was also promoted to OC that year. He was a tight ends coach. So there you go. Tight ends coach. Woo! And then Lovie Smith got the head coaching job in Houston. He was a a fall guy, replacing another fall guy. He came from college where he did not do well. Doug Peterson, Jacksonville, again, probably about to get fired. Josh McDaniels, the Raiders end up hiring him, fired, and just had a really, really bad experience there. Mike McDaniel went to the Dolphins, and he was the 49ers OC. And that year, I don't know if they went to no, they didn't go to Super Bowl, because that was the year the Rams went. But obviously they were in the NFC Championship, so they made a run. Vikings hired Kevin O'Connell, who was with the Rams, and they won the championship. So he was a late interview. Again, Dennis Allen, I'm again thinking, yeah, wait. Was he interim? I don't know. But anyway, he was with the Saints. He took the job. Brian Dable ended up going to the Giants. I do think we kind of passed on him, so that's, fine. Well, depending on what you want to say about that. And that was it. So that was the hiring cycle for that year. So again, out of that group, is Eberflus like absolutely an insane move? I don't think so. I think people's eyes are going to go straight to Kevin O'Connell and Mike McDaniel. Now, here's what I got to say. Because it truly bothers me. How come when a coach with a defensive background, how come it's held against them that they don't coach offense? And so when the offense is not doing well and you got a head coach with a defensive background, it's like, well, you got a defensive minded head coach. And if you listen to me, I hate that phrase with a burning passion because it's becoming a negative connotation and a very false term to like generalize a coach. But anyway, well, you got a defensive head coach. Like, well, that's what you get. But you never hear a team with a head coach with an offensive background, a terrible defense. Nobody says, oh, you got an offensive head coach. That's what you get. Nobody brings it up. I just don't understand. Why is it a knock on a coach that they don't know offense, but it ain't a knock on the coach they don't know defense? It makes no sense to me. I bring that up to say Mike McDaniel, have y'all seen his defenses? Have you seen the defenses they have out there? And so we've seen what's going on with them, and even with some high-powered weapons, mind you, but still, despite that offensive success, defenses have been near piss poor at different times. But then on top of that, the team just has no ability to, I wouldn't say no ability, because they almost won with Skylar Thompson. I think in Buffalo, it was snowing. But for the most part, Tua has been terrible in cold weather. The team is folded in cold weather, road games, big games. And so and again, people automatically, well, Tua, that's on him. And again, people get a benefit of the doubt based on narratives and who they like. Because out of Stephen A's own mouth, this man said about Eberflus, yeah, the defense is playing well, but you're the head coach. You're responsible for both sides of the ball. So I got to hold it against you that the offense ain't playing well. I have never, ever heard him say, or anyone say that about Mike McDaniel or any other coach like that. Never. They never get knocked for the defense not playing well. So not saying Mike McDaniel's a bad coach, but we see what's happening there. Kevin O'Connell. People going crazy this year. Sam Darnold's having one of the best years of his career, and they got so many wins. Kirk Cousins had way better years than him. He had way better years than Sam Darnold and just as many wins. This isn't new with the Vikings. Well, we have to wait and see. We can't get caught in the moment. We have to wait and see if can they actually do it in the playoffs. That's been the question with Kevin O'Connell and his teams. And again, there's no knock to neither of them, but I know there's certain people where they get all the benefit of the doubt and it's the cool, sexy name, but we got to be honest about kind of their resume. All right. So even again, if you want to use those two as examples of how we messed up, which I wouldn't agree with, I still would say wasn't a massive failure to get Eberflus. All right, so yes, we talked a lot about Eberflus, but had to get a context there. All right, so what happens after that? We bring in Eberflus, Ryan Poles. They start going to work, and we put out a absolutely terrible team that purposely we were trying to tank. And then we go out and tank. And as I said before, For whatever reason, this is held against Eberflus, but is not held against Ryan Poles, which I don't really understand how that works. And it was very obvious to anybody that understands football and or NFL football and free agency and all that, we were trying to tank. It'd be one thing if we just signed a bunch of players because we signed like the worst players available. And it'd be one thing if we just signed like a bunch of bad players and we were rolling with it. I'd be like, okay, well, you know, these guys can't really evaluate talent that well. But we signed them all to 1-year deals for the most part. That's a dead giveaway. They knew what they were doing. They were clearing cap, tanking. And so we had a terrible year. Yeah, just bad all around. But even before that draft, brought in Braxton Jones, brought in Kyler Gordon, who didn't play a lot. When he finally got on the field, mostly because of injury, wasn't that good, to be honest with you, but did get better. Brisker fit like a glove, box safety, perfect choice. He was the Adrian Amos to Eddie Jackson like it used to be. Braxton Jones ended up starting at left tackle and played better than expected early on, but eventually just kind of looked like, you know, what you expected. And we just kind of rolled on from there. And again, the roster around was bad and completely put a dent in Justin Fields' development. However, Justin Fields, I don't want to make it seem like they made Justin Fields do bad things that he never did before. Some of the issues that he had were issues he had in college that he continues to have now. But we did him no favors putting that terrible roster, but it was clear I don't think they believed in Justin, and they knew that Justin wasn't their pick. And so that wasn't, I don't think, a big concern from them, that how they were really hurting his development. So then we get the first overall pick, mainly due to actually, hold on, pause, back up. So in part of ripping out the roster, trading away, I believe, Khalil Mack and them, but Roquan ended up getting traded, flip him for a second and a fourth, and he goes to the Ravens. And a lot of people, I think, misconstrue that. It wasn't that, oh, they didn't like him or, you know, they're getting rid of him necessarily. It's that they knew he was good. They just didn't value his position. Now, whether that's right or wrong is, you know, whatever, but let's be clear. They didn't think Roquan was bad. They didn't want to pay what it would cost for him. So they got rid of him, got some assets. And then in the middle of our terrible roster where we gave no receiver help, we try to go get Chase Claypool. I ain't even gonna harp on that. Y'all know what I said if y'all listen. And that was a colossal disaster. And I'm not going crazy over compensation. People like to do that. This ain't the NBA. We not hoarding picks just for leverage. Like, yeah, a second round pick could be good, could be terrible. Claypool was a second round pick. Do I think he overpaid? Absolutely, but I'm not going crazy over that move. But it did end up disastrously where he gave next to no help to the roster. So, courtesy of Lovie Smith, we end up getting the first pick. The tank worked. We get the first pick, and that's where you get the first major decisions. Flip it to the Panthers. We get DJ Moore. We get a bunch of compensation. Big deal. We go down to number 9 in the draft. And so, you know, that is what it is. And then, so in that draft, we trade back. We let the Eagles take Jalen Carter. We get Darnell Wright. And who else? I think that's when we got like Pickens, Numb, and all that, you know, some other players. And for the most part, the group of players that we draft, a lot of them have been on the roster and continue to contribute. So there's that. But of course, looking ahead to now, people want to talk about the Jalen Carter. They won't talk about it back then. Jalen Carter, that year, or coming out the draft, is not the Jalen Carter he is today, and I do not believe he would have became the Jalen Carter he is today on the Bears. No way. We had zero D-line presence, and I wouldn't say we didn't have leadership or anything, but just overall, I don't think we had the mentors in the building, the vets in the building, to hold him accountable as a top 10 pick the way we could, or the way that the Eagles could. And I think that's 100% paid off dividends for him. Not say one talented, we know he was, but that, especially for our team that was so young and building, I did not think that was the right pick, and I stand by that. Darnell Wright has not at all been the player he was at Tennessee, but great prospect. I fully endorse that pick, and as I said before, I would choose to do that again, even though it hasn't worked out that the way we want. Not to say that he doesn't have the stuff. He just is not, for whatever reason, we're not getting him to play the way he's capable of playing. And again, goes back to my point. I don't think Jalen Carter would not have reached his potential as he did one with the Eagles. So they did that, get some other players. We rebuild the linebacker core. We bring in Edmonds, TJ Edwards. I forgot who else we brought in, because Tyreek was a draft pick. Jalen was already here. Secondary, pretty much kind of what it was. We had a lot of rookies. Valus, Tyler Scott. We bring all those guys in. We start to build a team and put talent on the field rather than what we were doing before. DJ Moore comes in as the first true number one in a long time. Even though I don't think DJ Moore is that type of guy, but still a number one more so than we've ever had. And then we go out there and the defense vastly improves. It gets better, but the offense continues to drag us down. Even though the run game was solid, we just couldn't, be efficient in our offense. And then during the bye week, they say, hey, we're going to switch over to a Lamar style offense. And early returns were a little better. We're riding with Fields' legs because he's not getting it done in the pass game. But eventually, again, we're not efficient enough. We're not prolific enough for the defense to save us. We never reached the level that we were. I want to say it was that with Vic Fangio, but whatever, with Matt Nagy's first year where we're scoring hella points, we never reached that level. We're good, we're solid, we're professional, we're stopping people, but we're not taking the ball and scoring. And so the offense still continues to lag. And then they fired Gatsby, and the season just it never really takes off the way you want. So then, at the same time, the Panthers took Bryce Young and continued to be one of the worst teams, went from like the 9th worst to the 1st worst. And lo and behold, we get the first pick again. And thus, Ryan Poles gets put in position to make a historic decision. And so, essentially, they get rid of Justin Fields. People talk about the compensation. Very low, but at the same time, he was going into a contract year, and people got to remember that. Because I remember not too long ago, I was like, how are these like big time names getting traded for like 4th, 5th round picks? Like, I don't understand. I was completely confused until I understood the contracts and the salary cap. And it was like, oh, okay, player that's not under contract's not that valuable. And so, because it's essentially a rental. Even with that being said, and we saw quarterbacks, because people like, he's a 1st round quarterback. We saw 1st round quarterbacks from his same draft class getting traded for pennies that same offseason. But I still would say that was a low ball offer. But the optimistic side of me says Ryan Poles was doing right by Justin Fields. Either way, he was leaving. Wasn't going to be life-changing compensation. We keep it moving. All right, so They decide we're moving on Fields, and then they go all in with Caleb. We get Caleb with the first pick, of course. Then we get Odunze. Or I won't say we traded for Keenan Allen before all that, but we get Odunze, we get trade for Keenan Allen. And then, we fill out the rest, this draft class, and then we come out, we hire Waldron, and we feel like, okay, we got the nucleus of talent, and we got somebody in the offensive scheme that can be more creative, and just bring more creativity, I think, to the offense. And essentially what happened was that everybody in the whole NFL wants these young quarterbacks to be on an express train. And reality has finally shown these people, maybe, we'll see. But I think hopefully most people recognize now there is no express train. People got to develop, people got to learn. And so Caleb hit a rough rookie transition that nobody wanted to acknowledge, because to acknowledge that a rookie is struggling to transition somehow means that we made the wrong pick or he's not going to be good. And that's essentially why nobody wants to say that. Nobody wants to look at the obvious. And as I said with Trubisky, as I said with Fields, and as I said this year, it's a combination of a number of things. But Caleb definitely played a big part in that, and nobody wanted to look at that. Instead, we wanted to scapegoat Waldron, who I'm not saying is great, but we wanted to scapegoat Waldron and say it's all his fault. All his fault, a little crazy. But we get rid of him, and then we get into the cycle. We already talked about the cycle. So now we got rid of all the excuses except Ryan Poles, and it still looks bad. A lot of people think we probably won't win the game. And to me, that's on the players in terms of what type of focus they're going to bring. I don't typically call a team like clearly checked out. That's just tough speculation for me, and that's a tough accusation. So I can't say that I watched the Bears and felt like they were checked out, but I do know it happens. So if they do check out, we might not win another game. But do I think it's possible? Absolutely. I don't know why everybody thinks we're going to get slaughtered by teams we just almost beat all three of them. But anyway, we might not win another game. And so even though we removed everybody's excuses, the excuse just continues to turn to the next person because it's not a one person excuse. So that is the error. Are there any glaring fireable offenses? In my opinion, I said that we should move on because I didn't think the philosophy aligned together. And I also feel like the Bears were just learning the wrong lessons by even saying they were going to keep Poles. Because, as I've shown on film, for those that are new, you can go check. Our roster construction and how we value things, I still think it was a mistake to get rid of Roquan in some aspects. There's some intangibles that you can't put a stat on. And so, it's not egregious to me, but I think about that. It was an idea of, I'm strictly going by the value of this position, despite what you mean to this locker room and everything, and to the city and to the team. That to me was more the problem with that analysis. On top of that, you bring in Waldron, which again, I do not want to hear that was an Eberflus hire. There's zero chance that Ryan Poles or Kevin Warren had no input in that hire. Again, I don't know who rang the bell for who, but either way, you knew. If you knew what you should know, you would say our roster does not fit what he's trying to do, or our philosophy for Caleb doesn't fit what he's trying to do. Because I was wrong 100%. But guess what? I don't have a full-time job working for the Bears. I go off, okay, what I know about Seattle kind of from the peripheral. And as I told y'all at some point in the season, especially because the advanced stats are new this year. We didn't have these before. So as I dig through the advanced stats for Seattle, I was just curious. I realized how Seattle's trends completely flipped in 3 years when Waldron took over. Where it started one way, where that's the Seattle that I know. The second year, big adjustments, and that's when Geno had his big year. But then that third year, it was almost opposite. The trends were almost opposite. And so had I known that when we hired him, I would have been like, I don't think this is the right person for the job. Because he didn't run a lot of play action by the time it was said and done. They didn't run a lot on early downs. They didn't get a lot of success on early downs. And things of that nature is what you associate with Seattle. Multiple tight ends, heavy multiple zone scheme, play action off that, very reminiscent of the 49ers. That's not what Waldron was, and that's not what he was with us. So I'm not saying he was good or any of that, but I will still say he was scapegoated. So in my mind, that's an issue between Eberflus and Poles, that we brought that in with a philosophy that doesn't match. And again, Thomas Brown is part of that. The passing game is so opposite of what our skill set is as pass catchers. We don't have any route runners I should take it back. Keenan Allen, Odunze can run some routes, but they're not fast. They're not explosive. Komet can't run routes, not fast, not explosive. And so that should have been married up better. The whole idea of going after Keenan Allen, spending money there instead of spending it elsewhere, I don't really want to get into that. I mean, I won't say I won't get into it. I don't think that that's an issue that I feel enough to dive into. I was perfectly on board with the idea, especially for Odunze, not just Caleb. And we can see how much Caleb trusts him. He always wants to give him the ball, but it didn't work out the way it was, they hoped. People got to separate the result from the decision-making process. And that's a lot of times people's issue. I think the line of thinking was fine, even if, it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. And then the offensive line got paid. Look, he wasn't paying Roquan. He definitely wasn't paying no guards. And we had invested, I think, in Nate Davis last year. So you pretty much had a whole offensive line returning, minus the center, where Cody Whitehair moved in the center, couldn't, handle it. So yeah, we have 4 or 5 returning. Most GMs are going to do that. And we were really good at running the ball, and we were this whole era, but we got away from running the ball, especially with good, downhill running backs. And on top of that, we brought in Shelton. Well, we brought in Ryan Bates, who I think he wanted to be the center, but then we also brought in Shelton, and yeah, neither of them just really worked out. And Shelton is a big issue. So yeah, misevaluations on those players, and really you could say that in a lot of areas. If you really broke it down, I'm sure every GM, every coach has their strength and what they evaluate. I mean, they're not even full-time scouts, so everybody has their positions of strength. Ryan Poles, being a former offensive lineman, talking so much about the trenches, knowing the past history with our O-line and young quarterbacks, I would say it's a big knock on his resume that he is not good at evaluating offensive linemen. And so, again, I say all the time, people say he didn't address the O-line. Yes, he did, over and over again. It wasn't a put in resource into it issue necessarily. It was more so a talent evaluation issue. And being bad or not having a good eye for O-line, that becomes problematic. That becomes very problematic. So definitely a notch there. So again, in total, we just really broke it down. We really looked at it. Hopefully, if you're still listening, people that listen to this, you're outside of the idea of we're just going to blame one person, it was all their fault. Like, that's idiotic. That's just lame brain analysis. In real time analysis, it was the completion of a number of things. Did we put a roster out there that could compete? This year, for sure. Last year, more so than the first year. The first year was very much on purpose. Did we manage to cap responsibly? Yes, we did. We're using a lot of cap now, but that's because we wanted to put more talent out there after we recouped a lot of the money that off the books the first year. So those are the main jobs of the GM. Did he draft well? No, he did not. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't great. And so for me, my thing was move on from him. I don't think the philosophy is going to match what we need to do and what we should do. And I don't know how easy it's going to be to find a coach out there that matches with what Ryan Poles is trying to do. Now, Ryan Poles got his own issues with the structure, and the team is continuing to lose, so the fans are hot. Either way, I think we should move on. But when we look at the true analysis, Matt Eberflus being hired, Ryan Poles being hired, being brought in, perfectly fine. Eberflus got a shot like everybody else got shot. Did Eberflus have the stuff to take it from a great teacher that he was with linebackers and D-line to become a coordinator where he has a whole unit coached up to then running a whole operation? No. Coordinator might have been the ceiling. Not just the clock management, which a lot of people focus on, but just in general, having the ability and leadership to take the team where it needed to go. And that's in all areas, because I do understand that, hey, your coaching staff falls on you at some point. And so, yeah, again, do I think it's just all Eberflus brought in Waldron? No, but the responsibility does fall onto him. So again, I said Eberflus should be out, but I see no bump in doing it in the middle of the season. And that's where we are. I haven't changed that. Ryan Poles, I don't think he did egregious. I think he had some choices that no other GM's probably going to face. And I think overall he's done a solid job, but I think we got to move on from that as well. The calls for him being fired, the calls from saying he messed the team up and all that, I think are a little outlandish. For the most part, you got some dumpster fires in the league, but for the most part, this was not a dumpster fire. This was just these were making decisions that were well within reason, and it didn't work out. And you know, people live on extremes. They can't just accept, hey, sometimes it just doesn't work out. No, it has to be a disaster. It has to be all these other things. I don't think that's what this was. I do think Ryan Poles won't be back, and I don't think he should be back. But I do think he should get another shot somewhere, potentially. But I just think with what Caleb is and what we'll need going forward, I don't think Ryan Poles and his philosophy that we've seen so far is the way the Bears should move forward. All right, that's it for me. Go down in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Share it around. Get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, stay up and bear down.